From eerie space music to an unexplainable UFO explosion, these are the creepiest things astronauts have seen in space. Up first is the knock. In 2003, astronaut Yang Liwei would be the first to be sent to space by China, and he experienced something almost inexplicable. Yang was sitting in his space shuttle on the way to the ISS when he began to hear a knock. Like a hammer on an iron bucket, the sound kept coming. Sound can only be conducted through matter, and so there is no sound in the vacuum of space, yet the knocking kept coming. This story terrified people across the globe and inspired more than a few sci-fi horror stories, but the knocking kept happening, not just to Yang, but many other Chinese astronauts that went to space from 2003 to 2008. The conspiracy isn't actually anything of the sort. There is no sound in the vacuum of space, but there sure is inside of a spaceship. It was actually determined that the knocking was coming from sudden air expansions and depressurizations inside of the shuttle. These issues were, thankfully, not catastrophic or deadly and have since been solved, but honestly, I think sudden depressurization inside my own shuttle is way scarier than someone knocking on the port. Next is the space snake. Story Musgrave is one of the most experienced astronauts on Earth, having been on 6 space flights, and during more than one of those flights has spotted something incredibly strange. Off in the weightless vacuum of space, he has seen a 6 to 7 foot long white snake wriggling and slithering through the vacuum. Apparently, the creature even tends to follow the ship for some time before going off on its own. Story's story has ignited imaginations and fears and has been cited as a possible encounter with extraterrestrials. Story Musgrave, however, has since come out saying that the snake was likely some sealant from the engines or a detached hose that had disconnected during the burn and was now moving on a similar trajectory through space. However, some still believe in space snakes. Next is space music. The Apollo 10 mission was a revolutionary test to prepare for the first landing of humans on the lunar surface and uncovered a lot of potentially disastrous issues that saved the Apollo 11 mission. During Apollo 10, a lunar module was even descended to within 10 miles of the lunar surface, which is when the astronauts heard the space music. A strange whistling series of tones that came through their radio set initially chilled them to the bone. It turns out, however, the music was actually from the interference of the radio waves with the other ship as they both moved at incredible speeds through space. Apollo 11 also experienced this music, but the astronauts had been warned ahead of time. Next is Laika. The Soviets won a lot of the initial parts of the space race, including being the first to put a living animal into space and the first to have a living animal return from space, which wasn't on the same trip. Laika would be one of the more famous animals sent up, however she was never intended to be brought home, and after her 4th orbit of the Earth, she sadly perished from overheating. The ship itself, Sputnik 2, would be left to orbit another 2,570 times before it then burnt up and crashed, but like Laika, there are dozens of other animals out in space to this day, many of which have been allegedly spotted by astronauts. The most recent animals to be sacrificed to space were a breeding pair of geckos to examine how zero-G intercourse works. I feel like seeing geckos frozen in an act of passion floating by your spaceship is just about as creepy as things can get. Next is the Kovalyanok Kaboom. Vladimir Kovalyanok was a twice awarded hero of the Soviet Union, and he had been in space for 217 days when he looked out the window and saw a strange object moving off in the distance. Then the object exploded in a bright blue circular flash and separated like a dumbbell splitting in the center. Other cosmonauts saw the ship and explosion as well, as did the ground crew, which reported a large electromagnetic pulse that came from the explosion. So something exploded in space, that much is certain, but what, why, where, or how is still completely unknown. It also, as far as we can tell, wasn't an American satellite or ship, as NASA seems to have had absolutely no idea about this event until later Soviet records were released. This is one of these few mysteries that has no known explanations, and the mystery continues. And finally, Musa Manarov. During a mission on the Mir station in 1991, Musa Manarov was observing a space shuttle docking when he saw an incredibly weird UFO approaching from the distance. The strange cylindrical white UFO appeared from behind the shuttle and then appears to begin to drift away. This is one of the only UFO sightings in space that was actually recorded and is eerily creepy. It could be a piece of space junk, however Musa himself insisted that the object was a large craft-like structure and and seemed to be spinning. Many people believe this to be one of the first encounters between humans and extraterrestrials in space, or this could just be a random piece of space junk passing by in the distance. What do you think? Do you believe Musa Manarov's account? Those were the creepiest things seen by astronauts in space. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time.